took us into the early part of 2012, so let me ask, what does WebBot say about 2012? Is it the earth-busting end?
It would seem that it's, well, okay. We have to understand that our data has a tendency to naturally separate itself out into various different groups that I've been able to identify, or I think I can identify. And those groups include what we call a Terra entity, which is a representation of all the stuff that's going to happen to the planet in the form of physical kind of stuff, earthquakes, volcanoes, fires, floods, that sort of thing. But we also have entities for the populace of the planet, and they will have similar kinds of linguistics in those entities. So the flood word would appear both in the Terra entity and in the populace entity. What our data has is that we started developing holes in the long-term projection ability of the data around the year 2012, a number of years back. We're now entering into the time of those holes that had been appearing for a number of years. This has a tendency to punch cross-connecting links between our entities out of the equation. So we have a lot of flood words for the United States for the year 2011. We have a lot less flood words for anybody in the year 2012. It is as though a significant series of events, as opposed to a single event, has occurred such that there's less input for our system. And it doesn't mean the internet shuts down, but it very well could mean that we've got so many people that are in food crisis or weather crisis or whatever, that the civilization as a whole has such large stresses put on it that it's the outcome, the viability of that civilization, our pan-global civilization here, is at risk during this period of time. And that's the best we can do. We don't have anything that, for instance, forecasts a direct pole shift, although we have lots of language around that, as you may expect. But we've also got language around Planet X and all different other kinds of stuff. However, there is some solid evidence supporting irregularities with the sun, the lack of the ability to grow food this year and next, and a very large impact on the population in a negative sense, what some people are going to describe as a die-off.
All right, we have a break coming up, so we've got about a minute here. Does the data show that it picks back up at some point, or did we just drop off the edge of the cliff there?
The data shows that we pick it up in 2014, but it's a small percentage of what we have even now in terms of the data coming in. It could be due to a number of things, though. It wouldn't necessarily have to be due to a huge die-off. It could be due to a large enough of a die-off or an impact on the civilization that we just don't have the communications.
Mm-hmm.
But it comes back, but small. I mean, on the order of maybe 1%.
Really small.
Oh, extremely so. Yeah, sorry, the ambiguity of language, yes. Defining small, less than 1%.
All right. We have to step away for a break, ladies and gentlemen. On the other side of this break, we have a couple of more things we want to examine with Clif High, and then we'll open up the telephone lines and allow you to join the conversation. Be sure that you are ready to write down the telephone number if you don't already have it memorized, because I will give that to you over the air. And for those of you watching our TV channel, you'll see it on your screen. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Kevin Smith Show. My guest this evening is Clif High. And Clif, before we went away for break, you made mention of two things that you said you don't really drill down into as far as mining the system for prediction. But you get a lot of words congregated around pole shift and Planet X. Let's talk about pole shift. What does it mean that you have a lot of words congregated around it? What would be the significance of that?
Well, you have to understand that we work in archetypes, so the pole shift stuff we have at two different levels. We have the
us. There's no possible way, folks, that I can think of every question. And so that's why we open up the telephone line, so you can partner up here and ask your questions or make your comments. The telephone number is 623-444-5889. 623-444-5889. If you're in the USA or Canada, I also have a toll-free number you can call. It is 888-223-4599. If you're outside of the USA or you're outside of Canada, you can call that main number. It will work from anywhere on this planet, 623-444-5889. Or you can go to my website, click on the link that says Flash Message. Just scroll down till you see the picture about tonight's show. On the right side of that picture, you'll see the link, but you must be outside the USA or outside of Canada. That's there because I don't have available to me a toll-free number for folks outside the USA and Canada. To the telephone, caller, you're live on the Kevin Smith Show. Your first name and from where are you calling?
Yeah, it's Kevin from North Bay, Ontario.
Hello, Kevin.
Hello there, Clif. It's a pleasure to speak with you finally. I've been here listening to you for a couple of years now on different forums. It's nice to finally talk with you.
Well, thank you very much. It still puzzles me that anybody really cares about what I say, but yeah. What's the question?
Well, I just got a news report from various different sources today that apparently Washington has called back all of their ambassadors worldwide. This is the first time in U.S. history that this has ever happened, that they're calling back all of the ambassadors worldwide of all the consulates and ambassadorial buildings and whatnot all over the world. And it seems like they're getting ready for something big to happen, and which may fall into a lot of the, a lot of the predictions and prophecies that have been going on. And what are your personal thoughts on what's going to happen over the next couple of months leading into the next couple of years into 2012? Do you think that pole shift may in fact be what's happening?
There's something very large